So funny, the Zoom thing, how it's like you're being recorded now. Do you
Many
want to
people would
stay?
have got caught. Like you would like, you're like, oh, I'm gonna record this without them knowing, and then it's like record. You're like, fuck.
How did that happen? All
That's
right.
fun.
So good. And I'll just jump in. So, welcome to this episode. We get a special guest today tuning in from California. His name is Charlie. Charlie is an entrepreneur and transformational coach. He is also an expert on trauma release, emotional repatterning, and on embodying presence. He works with people one on one in groups and also in retreats. And yeah, welcome on the show. How are you doing?
Thank you, brother. Yeah, thank you. It's good to be here. My
Pleasure to have
mind,
you.
yeah, my mind just went to like I normally listen to podcasts. I actually haven't been on too many myself. I've been asked multiple times, but often it doesn't feel aligned in the last couple of years. And normally I'm listening to the introductions, but then being in an introduction, it was a unique experience. But thank you for
You're
the kind
welcome.
introduction.
Yeah. So, did I miss anything important? Is there something people should know about you that you want to share that I didn't mention?
I think you covered quite a lot. I also do some retreats here in California and have done, and I like working in person with people because, as you said, I work sort of somatically and
Yeah.
with trauma in the nervous system. So it definitely helps seeing the whole body respond and feeling it, uh,
Yeah.
which has been difficult a little bit in the last couple of years with what's
That's
been
for
going
sure.
on. But we make do with what we can.
Amazing. Yeah. Before we jump in, I would love to hear a bit about your story on how did you get to do the work you do now? What was your journey that led you on this path
Okay. Uh,
of of release, like of trauma release, of embodying presence, and
totally.
you're also
I
a
th-
conscious entrepreneur. You're helping other people with business as well. So
yeah. Yeah, business is a big part of what I do. I love business. Business seems to be sort of a container for personal development, personal growth, for me to reflect and get very quick lessons on how I'm going and whether I'm in alignment. And
mm,
I've always had my own businesses. I've never actually worked for someone. So I always took a very different path. I think growing up, I was a bit more sensitive than most people. The school that I went to a private school,
mm-hmm,
and it was very much about grades and these things. And
mm,
I fit the mold, I did well, but I put a lot of pressure on myself.
mm,
And I think the big turning point for me was I was in a relationship when I was 18, and something in my soul was like, you got to do something different. And this was like 3 months before the end of the year. And I was like, look, I think I'm actually going to go overseas. So I
mm,
decided to go to Poland and teach English for a year. So Eastern Europe, just something totally different. It just turned me in a 90-degree angle. Whereas I was planning to study business and marketing and psychology at Melbourne University. And most of my friends were going straight from school to college. But I sort of did a right turn and I spent a year in Eastern Europe traveling all around, which I think started to break up some things in me and have me question certain things and just
mm-hmm,
go down some unique passions. And then when I got back, there was a decent divide. Like people had sort of moved on. People were like, and I was like, oh no, like look what I've discovered, look what I found. And they were sort of in their normal flow.
mm,
And so I went with my best friend to Thailand. And when I was boarding the plane, I picked up a book. Once again, I just felt like I was led to a book. And the book was The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari
mm-hmm,
by Robin Sharma. And I don't know why I was drawn to it, but I remember in Thailand, like half of me was like, let's party, let's go out, let's do this, crazy things. And then another half of me was like, geez, I really love reading this book. I want to keep reading this book. And my friends like, what are you doing? Like, we're supposed to be like having like drinks, like pre-drinks before. And I'm like, hang on, I've got my chapter to finish. And it was talking about meditation. It was talking about the subconscious mind, about healthy food, all these things that I'd never really discovered. I'd never been shown, I'd never been talked about an emotion or anything like this.
mm,
So it was like two parts of me sort of once again further dividing. And I think that was the big change. And then I would go to India for months at a time and spend time in ashrams.
Ah.
That was at the age of 19. And then I would travel back to Eastern Europe. I traveled to South America, climbed Machu Picchu. So I started to really create this spiritual understanding of what life was. And then I channeled that into business and had multiple businesses of my own. And that was a beautiful transition because business was acceptable by my friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
So because I was doing an acceptable thing, it was like, that was like sort of a safe haven for me to then explore these very, very unique things. Like when I came back from India once, probably at the age of 19, I was chanting in my room with like these white clothes on. And my younger brothers, like they would like sneak cameras in and like film me. And then they'd show at the dinner table, like, look how crazy Charlie is. What's he doing this for? And like, it was just a part of me started to awaken, but yet I still went to college and I still had a business. So I seemed to blend both worlds together quite smoothly. And I've continued that as I've gone. So I've had multiple businesses, and then I've been able to explore my deep passions and then share that in the container of business. And I'm well aware that you asked me specifically about trauma and releasing, but I didn't really get to that. But that's sort of the direction that I started to go.
Mm-hmm. Love that story. Yeah. And so what more led you into this, also working with the body, trauma release, and the work around that?
I met my beautiful ex-partner in Bali when I was 22. And because I went to a private school, I was very much mentally driven, and she was almost like a fairy, like an angel. Like she was like bare feet walking around, like so creative. And I was just like, whoa, what's this world? And we were together for about 5.5 years. And there'd just be many times that she would be embodying her heart, her body, her sensually eating her food or whatever it was, lying in the grass under a tree for 3 hours, which just didn't make sense to me at the time because I'd grown up, well, you got to be doing something, you got to be succeeding. And she'd be playing in the grass for 3 hours. And I'd be like, geez. All right. So then I started to like sort of explore this, and I started to see when I was out of my body and when I was actually eating food and I wasn't tasting it. And I started to realize that my sensitive system had been quite overwhelmed and not understood at a young age. So I'd sort of dissociated a little bit and pulled myself out for protection and safety. And
which
a big
is what
part of that
happens
is
a
like,
lot.
yes, I think it happens.
Like especially for men, like this whole dissociation
Exactly.
from your emotions and everything and from the body.
Exactly. Because we're not, at least as a woman, it's acceptable to have emotions in a way. But I think that's changing for men. And I think, for example, you're an example of that. Like you're opening up that world to men to start to come more into their emotions in their heart. And there's that sensitivity there, which I feel like is the new man, but there's also a strength, and a courage and a protection. So it's both. But yeah, discovering the sensitivity around me and realizing I was out of my body a bit, then it really started a journey of me seeing what parts of my body I was dissociated from, seeing what parts of my body I was rejecting, not from a physical, like looking in the mirror, I don't like my arms or whatever. It's not like that. It's more like a somatic sensation within the body that my awareness, often through the breath, is not reaching. And it's deep subconscious because something may have happened in childhood or past life or whatever it is, that there's that rejection from that place. Yeah. So I've spent a lot of time going into intricate parts of my body with my awareness, with my breath, and reopening and reintegrating these parts. Because if we don't do that, what I've discovered is those parts will speak the loudest, and they'll speak from trauma and they'll speak from protection. and we create quite a chaotic life for ourselves, and we think it's us, but it's actually this like deep, deep shadow, darkness, whole part of ourselves that's so far from our psyche that we have no idea about, that everyone else is seeing because everyone else is feeling, and everyone else is like, geez, what's going on there? And we're like, no, this is just me. But we really need to take responsibility to integrate these parts of ourselves so we can show up consciously with awareness.
Totally. Yeah. What were some of the tools that you were using in really bringing your awareness back into the numb and dissociated parts in your body?
It's changed over time. I think I started with some actual techniques, some tools and these things. So I remember I did about 11 years ago, I studied Psych K, which is a subconscious modality. And that started going into the mind and the subconscious, and then touching into the body as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think a big one also was there's a thing called TRE, trauma release exercises.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you know about them. And I think it's about putting the body into, you do or you don't.
I do know about it. I did it. Yeah.
You do. Yes, yes. I thought you did. So it's about putting the body into a state of tension consciously.
Mm-hmm.
So then it starts to release this tension through shaking.
Yeah, like tremor.
But these tremors are very like, you know, deep within the bones and things.
Yeah.
So that started to open up a lot as well. And I think as I'm speaking, one of the biggest thing has been plant medicine.
For sure.
Ayahuasca, psilocybin, because when I would do these ceremonies, this is actually before the trauma release exercises. I found the trauma release exercises because this process started to happen through my body naturally. And I was like, wow, this seems so incredible. Let me see if there's anything that actually is like people know about this or whatever. And then I found, you can actually put your body into a state. But when I would do these ceremonies, my body would go into these deep tremors for like 6 to 10 hours, just processing through the whole nervous system and like defragging a lot of this stress, trauma, tension.
Yeah.
So that was another thing that opened up. And now mainly what I do is I use pure awareness. So right now, if I say, you know, take your awareness to your left foot, all of a sudden you can bring your left foot into your awareness.
Yeah.
And this is how I do it now. It's me just moving my attention and awareness, and sometimes it's through delivering it through the breath to certain parts of the body.
Super powerful.
That's where I'm at the moment.
Beautiful. Yeah, I also work with that a lot. It's really powerful and so simple. But it's also a huge practice. But very challenging. So talking about embodied presence. So how do you define that? And I think that's a great link because it's also being present with our awareness. So how would you define a truly embodied presence, and how do you cultivate that?
I would say presence is who we are. So that is like the fundamental I is presence, is awareness. So presence comes through into this world through all living beings. Another word for presence could be God, without the religious connotation, just the energy that's creating this world. And then we get to experience ourselves, which is presence, excuse me, through the five senses. So we have a body, we have the five senses. So we get to presence, which is everything, it's God, gets to experience itself through the five senses, through our body. And yet we have a construct within this reality for whatever reason, and that's the mind. And the mind is the thinking, it is the controlling, it is the manipulating, it is obviously it's an incredible tool, but it seems to have backfired quite strongly. And often the mind tries to manipulate and dampen and squash presence. So it's sort of squashing ourselves out. So then we become this autopilot thing of thoughts, of reactions, and that's the mind. So I feel like for all of us, it's a process of waking up every day and seeing what we can do to bring more of our attention to our presence, to who we really are,
Yeah.
and start to withdraw the control and the attention from our mind. And when we're doing that, we need to trust, because presence, then the mind isn't in control. But the problem is we identify as the mind. So it feels like we're dying because we think we're this thing. So if we're pulling attention away from who we think we are, there is a death process. But it's, in my experience, it's the truth.
Yeah.
To remove ourselves from this part back into our, also the heart, is a part of that. I feel our heart is
Of our presence. So.
is a big part of where presence comes through.
Yeah,
So,
totally. Yeah. I just got this funny image. It looked like, if you think about body, mind, and soul, it was like more these remote controlled bodies by the mind, like where the soul is not really in the awareness. And it's more like claiming our life back, coming home into our body as our soul, as awareness, and recognizing we are not the ego mind that thinks it dies when we let it go, and to come home really into that embodied presence in the body.
Coming home.
Yeah, beautiful. So what would be a practice you are doing, or you would give someone that says, hey, Charlie, I want to cultivate embodying my presence?
I would first start to know, if someone came up to me and said, hey, I want to start embodying my presence.
Yeah.
Probably what I do is say, okay, I can do it with you. So I'd say, if you came and said that, I'd be like, okay, what's a situation in your life currently that maybe you're struggling with?
It can be triggers in a relationship when things get intense.
Okay.
I mean, to stay present. I mean,
and what's something that can trigger you in your relationship? What would your partner say, or what's a specific situation?
It's like blaming, or saying specifically, what would be a specific thing to be like, I want you to like, I don't know, I don't like how, like I don't trust your presence, for example.
Okay.
Something like that.
So then I'd say, okay, let's role play this.
Yeah.
Okay. So you ready? I'm going to be your partner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have to talk to you about something, like now.
Okay.
This is just not cool. I'm not trusting you right now. I'm not trusting your presence at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I can just tell you're off. You're off. So where in your body are you feeling this as I'm speaking?
It's like a contraction in the heart. It's like,
okay. So then I would say, okay, so there's something in the heart that gets impacted, by an external situation, which is often just a reflection from something that happened in childhood, something that happened previous to that, something that happened in the womb, whatever. But this part is scared, is protected. So then, obviously, this is just a very simplified example, but then I would say, okay, spend time with this part of your body. It's crying out. It's a bit vulnerable. It's not feeling full, and it's not feeling like the energy is like radiating totally open, because if it was 100% open, which is obviously who's 100%, everyone's going to get triggered. But if you fill that up internally, then if an external situation, if a reflection comes at you, and you've been filling it up. And then your partner's like, yeah, your presence is just off, but you've already been filling it up. You're actually more present
Yeah.
because you're not being taken by the wound. The mind isn't jumping down. It's not then reacting to what's happening. It's not projecting itself onto that. And then there's more, you're able to be more present. And then your attention awareness will probably, as a man, then be grounded more in your lower part of your body, in your hips, in your pelvis, in your root, because the heart isn't like whoa, it's like whoa, 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 whoa. So it's like there's just more groundedness there.
Got it. Yeah. That when you just spoke about it, I was sensing that something is actually much more challenging for me at the moment, which is just like old trauma of my own that's being processed. Like I'm also years in working on that and doing a lot of like some parts, like some real deep old stuff coming up from like violence in the body and this tension and pain in the body. And sometimes I noticed that with myself and also others, it's hard for us to really stay with our awareness where there's like staggering pain being processed in the body. So it's also with that, just like having the practice to go there voluntarily, to choose to go there by yourself and practicing that, right?
Yeah, you're talking about if I'm hearing you right, there's a lot, at times there's pain coming up.
Yeah.
And it's hard to go to that pain. Yeah.
To stay there and yeah.
Exactly. And I had a situation many years ago where my neck would get so much pain, left side of the neck, left side's often the feminine, and it would be pulling so much. And even to the point where I'd wake up sometimes at night and just be crying, like, why me? Like, why do I deserve this? Like, what's going on? Like, I've been doing so much. I've been showing up in a good way. Like, it just felt like it wasn't fair in a way. But what I noticed was I was deeply rejecting this part of myself. Like the pain, I was like, fuck off. Like it was just like pushing away. And the moment that I realized that and moved towards it, like what you're saying, like, and actually held it, because this pain is a part of ourselves showing up within our awareness, within our psyche. And it's deeply wanting unconditional love. Because if I love a child, if I love a baby unconditionally, if I don't have a child right now, but if a child my child came towards me crying, this is a metaphor for the pain's crying. But if my child came towards me and I'm like, geez, can you just go away? Like, I'm sick of you. Like, I'm absolutely sick of you. Like, just leave. All of a sudden, they're going to go and clamp up, and they're going to get probably louder or more shut down. But if they come crying and I open up my arms and I say, come here, I'm so sorry that you're crying, like that I get sad as well sometimes. Like, is it okay if I just hold you? And know that if you cry, it's totally fine. Like, I'm here with you. Most likely the crying will happen, but it'll process through and there'll be deep peace at the end because there's acceptance. So that's just like a metaphor of the body as well when it speaks.
Totally. The pain's like calling out, like you say, for acceptance and love, to be like, I don't reject you, I don't dissociate from you, I don't push you away, I don't try to change you. It's more like I accept you. And that's when like the transformation actually can happen, like in Vipassana, when we sit with it, right? And it has the space to flow and transform naturally.
Exactly. Yeah, Vipassana works very similar in this way.
Yeah. What are some of your other experiences that you have with working with suppressed emotions?
My own or others?
Either, it could be your own experience with that, or like the insights you got. It could be the insights you got from your own experiences or how you use it in your work.
Got it. There was a time where I was my solar plexus. So the solar plexus, is below, just like on the physical body, like the rib
Yeah.
cage, like where the ribs meet, and it can go a little lower. So it's in this often vulnerable part. And I work a little bit with a system known as human design, and that breaks up different centers. So there's 9 centers in the chart, and the solar plexus in my specific chart is totally open. So I absorb a lot of energy through there. But I had a direct experience with my solar plexus where anyone who ever would go to like touch me there, you know how people sometimes go like, they just go like, oh, they like point like, hey, like Charlie or whatever, but it's like
Yeah,
going
yeah, yeah,
towards the
yeah.
area subconsciously. I'd be like, whoa, no. Like I just like pull away. Or if, my partner would like go to like rub this area or something, I'd be like, fuck, no. So there was this shadow vulnerability that was so deep, but I just thought that was normal until I started to catch myself doing that and be like, geez, something is like a bit off here and a bit out of balance. And I realized that this solar plexus area, which is to do with feeling powerful or feeling powerless, it's to do with control. It's a more masculine center. It's to do with action. It's yellow. It's fire. And often it can be, if it's out of balance, it can be like hyper aroused. So someone could just be overly stimulated, taking stimulants, just going. Or someone could be really lethargic, dropped out, can't really be bothered. Everything's sort of the same. I don't really have any emotions. How are you doing? Yeah, I'm all right. How are you? Yeah, I'm all right. It's all good. I think I'm fine. Everything's going all right. There's just like this real mellow, just dropped out. And I was more of the dropped out in a way. Like I used to have borderline chronic fatigue, glandular fever, mono. Like there was this lethargic part, and it was like, oh, I'm tired. I'm pretty tired. I could never get enough sleep. I'd sleep during the day, these type of things. So mine was very much under resourced. And when I discovered this about myself, I started to really, and this was supported through other people's reflections of me and people guiding me into this area, people like me realizing this about myself. All these different types of things started to add up and get to a point where it's like, okay, let me actually start to consciously go into this area. So then I would do that through the breath. I'd do that through awareness. I'd do that through plant medicine ceremonies. I did it through Kambo, which is a frog medicine that, would bring things out, and I'd be placing it directly on this part of the body to bring it out. And yeah, I started to realize the amount of sickness that was there, the amount of darkness, the amount of shadow, that it was just like, it felt so like, for example, many people might not know what Kambo is, but it's a secretion from a frog, and I'm sure you know what it is. And you burn points on your skin, and then you place it on, and it purges. You purge up toxins. So I could put like maybe 3 points on my shoulder, and I probably wouldn't purge. It would get me to a space where it's just before, but ideally you purge. So then I would put more on, for example. But to give you an understanding, if I put 1 point on my solar plexus, it would feel like it's like 8 points. Like it would just be so like hot and sick and purging. And so there was just such vulnerability and weakness there. So I just went into and then after months and months and months and months, I went to my partner and I'm like, I think I'm feeling a lot like stronger. And I'm like, punch me here. And she just goes like, and I'm like, oh, that was pretty good. Like no one could even point their finger at that area, So I can feel the energy moving through. That's just an example of moving through that. And once that moved through, then I can move it to other areas that would also be, it's like a chain, and you start to build some foundation, and then you work towards. So for example, you work a lot with the heart. Some people's solar plexus might be off, or root, or feminine, or whatever. And sometimes in my experience, we have to go to certain places so the heart feels safe. You know, if I had all these parts that were off, and then it's like, okay, go to your heart, like feel love, my heart would be like, nah, like not ready. Like I don't feel safe. I don't feel like there's support to actually allow it to open. So in my experience, it's about building foundations to then move into the heart to open. But everyone's different. You know, that's just my experience.
Yeah, yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. So it seems like the suppressed emotions also held there, and of course other things were weakening your system. So they are weakening our systems when there's tons of suppressed emotion in there, and we are not actually in there. It's like some psychics describe it like it's like a blob of like dark, dense stuff that's there. So our presence, our light's not there. We're not really there. And it's kind of like it's like you said, with Kambo or plant medicine or whatever trauma release tool to help us be held and release that stuff from our system, to purge it and for us to come home. And that also strengthens us incredibly, like with you, like from the finger to the punch. That's a beautiful.
It was a big difference. I was like, wow, that's a good one. That's a good result.
Yeah, and who likes to be punched in the solar plexus? So it's not the best place for anybody to be punched in, really. But that's good. That's a great sign. And yeah, so there would be so much that we could talk about. Also really love that you seem to work with the same plant medicines and frog medicines that I do. But one thing I would still be really curious about is, how would you describe emotional repatterning? How can you explain what that is and how it works?
I would say, so there's emotions, there's the mind, there's the physical body.
Mm-hmm.
Underneath emotions, because emotion is often a label of sensations.
Mm-hmm.
So I have certain sensations, my throat starts closing over, my tears start to come to my eyes, and I say, I'm sad, you know. So underneath emotion, there's often a vibrational essence and tone of energy that comes through. Now, often this vibrational essence is through the womb, when someone's in the womb. And then from 0 to 7, it's like emotion. Like if you look at a child from 0 to 7, there's a lot of emotion there. It's pure emotion. And then you go to school and you start learning language and you start developing your mind from 7 to 14. And then you go through puberty at around 14, 13. And the physical body starts to really come online and change a lot. So we go from like energy to like density, like vibrational tone, emotion, the mind, into the body, the physical body. So often when this is obviously a side note, but often if the physical body is experiencing pain or an injury or whatever, it's not the origin. You know, what's causing that is probably the mind, which is saying certain things, but then what's causing the mind to say those things is often an emotion. And what's causing the emotion is often a vibrational energy or tone that we're just not even aware of. So emotional repatterning, I would say that is to unstick and unlock what we were just talking about, this stuck dark energy in certain parts of the body, so that this vibrational energy, so that God, so that presence can actually come through and reintegrate and repattern.
Yeah.
If we're trying to consciously repattern, like I want to feel this, I think that can be at times okay, but that's using the mind. You know, we're using our mind to control our emotional process, which is really not ideal.
Yeah.
So it's really just, ideally, we're using the presence, the vibrational tone, to unhook, unwind certain emotional responses, reactions, patterns that then repattern to our original state of more harmony. And it's not even our original state. It's like, it's God's original state. It's like, well, that's and we don't know until we unwind. We don't know. So that's what we have to let go of control and we have to trust, because
Yeah.
we're not in control of God. We're not in control of presence. And that's what the mind doesn't like. So the mind will just keep gripping and gripping and gripping, and makes us feel safe. But that safety is actually causing us so much pain. So it's sort of like an illusion.
It is an illusion. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, I love what you said also about it's not the root cause. There's so many labels, like people say, oh, you have depression, anxiety, all these different things that are showing up in the mind in this case, or also in the body. But it's usually not that where it starts, and often, especially around things like depression, anxiety, these can definitely be symptoms of suppressed emotions, of big amounts of like just stuff down, dissociated, and it's just like symptoms, of that, right?
Exactly.
Really resonate how you explained that.
I think about even 5 years ago, I think I wrote something on my Facebook or something, and it was exactly about anxiety and depression. And I think I put like an iceberg, a picture of an iceberg, and everyone's very happy to point at the symptom of like, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, and then to feed that symptom, which is actually further suppression of a medication, when there's this huge iceberg under the water.
Yeah.
And if we can actually just address that and allow it to repattern, allow it to unwind, allow the stuck energy to just move through and process and integrate, the symptom of depression goes away, because we're not using so much energy to just hold it down and suppress, which is depressive. It's like suppressive.
It is, exactly. Yeah, totally. And it's like the laws of nature would say that once you stop pressing this under the water, like for example, it would be like air, it will just naturally rise and to the surface and release, right? It's just about stopping to try to control it and repattern this conditioning of suppressing it, right?
Exactly. And then what will naturally rise? Because what is presence? What is God? Well, it's love. So a natural rising of love and movement and freedom and expression will come if we just stop holding down. But that's all we know to do, because that's what the world does, and that's what we're taught to do at a vibrational and emotional level. I didn't even hear the word emotion probably for the first 18 years of my life. It was that much in the darkness that people would just be like, hell no, not speaking about anything like that. So it was all control. So then to unwind that, it seems easy, but it's a process. But if we just take one step at a time, our natural state starts to harmonize and come through, which is love. And the mind is unfortunately fear. So ultimately, there's many books like Fear or Love, like these are two fundamental things. But you can't, it's not choosing love from the mind. And yet if you've inhabited your mind your whole life, you can't see that you're in your mind. It's like a fish. You can't see that you're in the water. So often you might need some reflection. You might need some really hard lessons, life lessons, to snap you out of that space so that you can just let go. Often life takes people to ultimate suffering to actually realize that there has to be another way. But if we can consciously bring more awareness to ourselves, to our shadows, then maybe life doesn't have to take us into deep, deep suffering for us to choose a different path. That's the goal.
Definitely. I know for sure that life did take me to my knees a few times, like rock bottom, like for me to start waking up. But once you start awakening and you consciously choose to go in there and release the identification with the ego and open up to more embodying awareness and God or love, that's it. And that's what I say always, like bliss is our natural state of being. It's like when we get all this skunk out, like all this conditioning, all this suppressed stuff it's not really who we are, then really blissful state is actually natural and love, like you say.
That's where we're going.
That's where we're going.
One step at a time.
Beautiful. Yeah, so I'm aware of time, so let's start wrapping it up if you like. And so you're also working with human design. That's also how I found out about you in the beginning. And there's this year of 2027, right? Coming up, that's in human design, it's huge. And I would love for you to share a bit about that in the context of the global awakening and what's happening on the planet around that year. What's up with that?
2027 is known within the framework of human design. Human design is a system that was channeled through a man many years ago, and it combines multiple systems, and one being astrology and the chakras. And so within this framework and within what he downloaded and received from life was that 2027 is a very, very important year for humanity. And it's known within this system as the great change, the great mutation. And it's specifically interesting that I was talking about it, but it's specifically around the solar plexus center. So there's this huge mutation and transmutation around the collective solar plexus center. So that is going to impact everyone.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, the solar plexus is about freedom or control. So like, as I'm speaking, it's interesting because everyone's going through their own views and experiences of what control and freedom is now, you know, with things that have come up with the coronavirus, with vaccines, with all these things. Everyone is going to be sharing from a space of, you know, I want to feel free, or I actually prefer not to be free, or you're controlling me, or you're not controlling me, or there's always going to be these shadow aspects in someone's view and outlook, unless you've fully freed yourself and harmonized and integrated this part of your system. But life is taking people deeply into the solar plexus center. And it will continue to do that all the way up to 2027 as this mutation happens in our DNA. Because the way that businesses have been run, there's a lot of manipulation, there's a lot of shadow, there's a lot of control, there's a lot of I'm your boss, you listen to me, you know, bow down to me, all these things. But I feel like life is wanting something different. It's wanting something more harmonizing. But to do that, you can't just do that. You can't just be like, well, let's just, instead of this hierarchical structure, let's just create a more symbiosis or more just collective structure within this organization.
Yeah.
Because if the body and mind are the same, it's going to naturally, it's not going to work. So a deep mutation has to happen. And that's what we're being taken into now. So most likely after 2027 and beyond, the world is going to look extremely different. And it will have to do with masculinity, because the solar plexus is a masculine center. So this sense of drive and hustle, I imagine, will shift and change. And masculinity is in women and men. So there will be an integration of that. And I obviously don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but we're already seeing big things happening in the world, and that will continue to happen until humanity really receives what we need to receive and start being and acting in a way that's more harmonious to the collective.
Totally got it. So, and on a more personal note, you said, of course, masculine is in men and in women, but now specifically for men, and aside from human design, what's your personal take on what's most important from your perspective for us men to focus on right now to create positive change in ourselves and therefore in the world? Do you see to be important?
I would say for men to create safety in their system, because men are actually deeply afraid often. And so if there's not safety in one's own system, we can't provide safety for women or for the feminine energy. Even the feminine energy within ourselves, with our heart won't feel safe if there isn't safety and protection in a container within the strength of our body, the construct and strength of our mind, the root center, like our foundation. Are we embodying the lower part of our body? Are we allowing the breath to sink in, and do we feel safe? Are our shoulders back and resting down? So I would say, as a man, the biggest responsibility right now, alongside always supporting the community, giving what you can, these things, but to provide safety within yourself, because then you can start to actually provide a safe container for others. If you don't feel safe within yourself, you're just going to be getting triggered, which is then going to cause other people to not feel safe around you. So then it's just fear. So it's just this fear thing. So we're really moving towards safety, trust, love within ourselves, so we can provide that for others. And we do have a responsibility as men to provide safety.
Yes. Totally resonate with that. Thank you so much, Charlie. So
my pleasure.
Thank you for being on. And what are you working on currently, and how can people find out about what you do and how to contact you?
So I have a human design business specifically for projectors. So you can get your free human design chart. And if you're a projector, it's 20% of the population. It's a bit of the luck of the draw. But projectors, it's not the easiest at times being projectors. We have a refined sensitive system. But I've got a good thing going on with the projector movement. And now some people who aren't projectors, they're like, oh, I wish I was a projector. So we're creating a beautiful community there. And I'm about to launch a live business training for projectors. So how to actually be in business as a projector in a really powerful, embodied way, because we are here to be powerful, yet a lot of projectors are disempowered. So that's a part of what I do. And then so that's projectormovement.com. And then I also do some very, very select coaching, one-on-one. And if anyone was interested in that, it's just charliemcguinness@gmail.com. You can just email me. And then where I get most passion is retreats and these things. So in California, there's certain retreats that we're running, and it's a beautiful space that's being created. So yeah, I've got different things going on, but just living one day at a time and doing the work within myself as best as I can to then show up for others.
Yeah. Thank you. So thank you so much for being on here. And yeah, hope our listeners get a lot out of this episode.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.